The morning was chilly and the air felt heavy as if something strange was about to happen. I ran out of the house, my coat still open, as the sun began to illuminate the hills with gold and purple colors. Everything was too quiet on the farm, as if time had stopped. Back in the stable, something seemed wrong. Boreal, my companion horse and always so calm, was restless, neighing and moving in a way that was not normal. My heart started beating faster, and I ran towards the stable. As soon as I arrived, I saw something that made me stop. My son's boots were abandoned in the entrance, covered in dust. He never left things lying around like that. Something there didn't fit, and a strange feeling took over me. With my heart racing and my mind full of questions, I entered the stable carefully, trying to understand what was happening. Boreal, my faithful horse, was restless, neighing non-stop. I ran my hand over his neck to calm him, murmuring soft words, but his tension seemed to mirror my own. It was then that I noticed. His reins were poorly adjusted, as if they had been put on in a hurry, and there were fresh marks on the saddle. Who could have ridden Boreal without me knowing? My instincts screamed that something was wrong. Without wasting time, I ran back to the house. I climbed the stairs as if each step were an eternity, until I reached my son's room. The door was ajar. When I entered, I found the bed in a mess and his favorite jacket still hanging on the chair. He never went out without it. The feeling that something was out of place became even stronger when my eyes fell on a piece of paper on the desk. It was a sheet returned from a notebook with words written in a hurry, almost shaky. "She is always here, but never with me." My hands began to shake as I read. What did that mean? My mind raced for answers, but all I found was a rising tide of guilt and worry. I looked out the bedroom window, searching for some sign. The wind swayed the trees gently, but nothing seemed different. It was as if the world outside was at peace, completely ignoring the turmoil inside me. Standing still was not an option. I had to act. I returned to the stable and mounted Boreal, who seemed as anxious as I was. I adjusted the reins, feeling the weight of urgency, and took off at a run. The sound of hooves echoed in the morning silence as we headed toward the woods that surrounded the farm. My son loved this place. Whenever he needed a moment to think, this was where he went. But something inside me told me that this time would be different. The path was littered with fresh footprints, each one leading me closer to him. Or so I hoped. Boreal stopped suddenly in a small clearing, as if something had caught his attention. On the ground, among the damp grass, was the watch my husband had given our son for his 12th birthday. I dismounted and bent down to pick up my watch. It was cold, with tiny drops of dew on the metal, as if it had been left there recently. I looked around, trying to find another sign, but the woods seemed like a huge jigsaw puzzle of dancing shadows and lights. Then a sound behind me broke the silence, the snap of a twig. My body froze for a second, but when I turned around, there were only trees and emptiness. I clutched the watch in my hands, feeling a shiver run down my spine. I whispered to the wind, "Where are you?" The silence answered only with the rustling of the leaves. Boreal began to move restlessly, as if sensing something I couldn't see. I trusted him and mounted again. He led us deeper into the woods, the path becoming narrower and the trees denser. The sound of hooves on the damp ground seemed to echo, mingling with my thoughts. The footprints were still fresh, indicating that my son couldn't be far away. We came to a fork in the road. One path led up a misty hill, while the other led down to an old wooden bridge over a stream. Something on the bridge caught my eye. A chalk mark, a small, hastily scribbled drawing of a horse. I crouched down to get a better look. It was the kind of drawing my son had made when he was little, something so simple and familiar that it made my heart clench. "You were here," I whispered, determination building inside me. Something told me the bridge was the next step to finding him. The bridge to the heart, a story of reconnection. I immediately recognized the drawing on the wood of the bridge. It was as familiar as the scribbles my son had made when he was little, simple yet full of meaning. My heart sank and I whispered, "This way." Guiding Boreal carefully, we headed toward the stream. The soft sound of flowing water filled the silence, while the creaking of the boards beneath the horses' hooves seemed to echo in my mind. As we crossed, thoughts began to invade my mind. The recent arguments, the awkward silences, and all the times I preferred to believe he was okay, even though I knew deep down that something was wrong. On the other side of the bridge, the path led us to an old cabin, hidden deep in the woods. It was a place we hadn't visited in years, not since he was just a child. As soon as I saw the worn-down structure, Boreal stopped. I dismounted from the horse, tying his reins to a nearby tree. The cabin door was ajar, as if inviting me in, but at the same time protesting my presence. I took a deep breath and slowly pushed it open. The creaking of the wood was almost deafening in the silence. Inside, the air was cold and damp, with a strong smell of aged wood. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, and then I saw it. In the center of the floor was my son's backpack. I approached it slowly, as if each step was a test for my already racing heart. Inside the backpack, I found a water bottle, a light jacket, and an open notebook. The pages were filled with drawings, horses, as usual. But what really caught my attention were the words written at the top of one of the pages. "Have you ever wondered if you really see me?" Those words hit me like a thunderclap. My hands shook as I held the notebook, and an avalanche of emotions washed over me. Guilt, sadness, regret. All the times I had been distracted, thinking that my presence was enough, now screamed in my mind. He didn't just need a roof over his head or food. He needed me, truly present. A snap of dry twigs outside broke my reverie. I turned quickly, leaving the notebook on an old table. "Is that you? I'm here," I called, my voice full of hope. I left the cabin, but no one was there. Only the wind played through the leaves, bringing a feeling of emptiness. I mounted Boreal again, determined to follow the footprints that continued on the ground. Something told me that my son was close by, but I knew that finding him wouldn't be enough. I had to do more. I had to show that I was willing to change. The path led us back to the farm. The sky was beginning to lighten, but the tension in the air was almost palpable. In the distance, I saw the stable, that familiar place, now filled with uncertainty. When we arrived, I dismounted, carefully adjusting the reins. The stable door was ajar. Boreal stood still, as if sensing something important was about to happen. I took a deep breath and entered. In the center of the stable stood my son, motionless, with a panicked expression on his face. We stood there for a moment, as if time had frozen. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to hide my nervousness. He hesitated before answering. "I thought something had happened." His voice was full of concern, and I could tell how scared he was, too. He looked at me and, with a tone of pain that cut like a blade, said, "Why do you always come back to Boreal but never to me?" These words were a punch in the gut. It wasn't a scream or an accusation, but the naked truth. In that moment, I realized how much I had failed. All the work, all the routine. None of it mattered if I wasn't truly there for him. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice almost breaking. "I know I've been absent, but I want to change that." He remained silent, but his eyes revealed a mixture of pain and hope. It was a beginning, a new beginning. The next morning, I decided to do something different. I picked up Boreal and called my son. "I want to teach you something," I said, handing him the reins of the horse. "Teach you what?" he asked suspiciously. "To ride." We spent the morning together, between laughs and small challenges. With each step, it seemed like the distance between us was closing. When he finally dismounted, he already seemed more confident. Can we do this again tomorrow? He asked, with a sparkle in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. I smiled, feeling genuine happiness. As many times as you want. That day, I didn't just win back my son. I regained the connection we had lost and the chance to rebuild everything that really mattered. If you want to see more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our content and watch this exciting story that is on the screen. Let's go.